A Grammy Award-winning rapper remains locked up, accused of being the mastermind of a plot to kill his rival. But now federal authorities are tacking on more charges in connection to the fatal 2022 ambush. Durk Banks, better known by his stage name Lil Durk, was arrested in October near Miami International Airport, allegedly on his way out of the country. He's accused of plotting to murder rapper Taekwon Bowman, better known as Quando Rondo. Federal prosecutors alleged in the previous indictment Lil Durk put a bounty on Quando Rondo's head after one of Rondo's associates shot and killed Durk's longtime friend and collaborator King Von in 2020. Now in a superseding federal grand jury indictment, the new charges he faces could keep Lil Durk behind bars for the rest of his life. Initially, the Chicago rapper was charged with one count of conspiracy to commit murder for hire. And the new indictment returned Thursday. It adds Lil Durk as the lead defendant to the October indictment that previously charged 5 other men with the 2022 fatal ambush. So now Durk is charged with conspiracy, one count of use of interstate facilities to commit murder for hire resulting in death, one count of using, carrying, and discharging firearms and a machine gun, and possession of furtherance of a crime of violence resulting in death. These are the same charges Kevon London Grant, a.k.a. Vonnie, Asa Houston, a.k.a. Boogie, David Brian Lindsay, a.k.a. Brown Eyes, Keith Jones, a.k.a. Flocka, and DeAndre Dontrell Wilson, a.k.a. Didi, already face. According to federal prosecutors, those 5 men all have ties to Lil Durk's Only the Family, or OTF, that was formed in 2010. They claim OTF wasn't just about the music, but the organization also acted as an association of individuals who engaged in violence, including murder and assault at Lil Durk's direction, to maintain their status within OTF. And authorities claim Durk directed them to carry out the sinister crime. According to court documents, Lil Durk feuded with the victim only known as TB in the indictment. However, the initials are the same as Quando Rondo's full name, Taekwon Bowman. Their feud stemmed from the November 2020 murder of Lil Durk's friend King Von, in which an associate of TB shot and killed him outside a hookah lounge in Atlanta. According to the indictment, Lil Durk seemingly wanted revenge and allegedly put a bounty on TB's life. That all came to a head 2 years later on August 19th of 2022 when several OTF members and associates allegedly used 2 vehicles to track, stalk, and attempt to murder Quando Rondo for hours. And eventually they caught up to Rondo, his cousin, and his sister at a gas station near the Beverly Center shopping mall. Lots of disturbing allegations in this indictment against Lil Durk, but I want to take this moment to thank Upside for sponsoring us. You might be asking yourself, what's Upside? Well, it's a free app that gets you cash back on daily essentials like gas, groceries, and restaurants. Sometimes I only have time for a quick lunch break, but then there are times I can have a nice sit down at a restaurant and I can use Upside for both. Plus, I can use Upside to get cash back when I do. It's so easy and simple to use and completely free, so why not? This is actual real cash back too. It's money that appears in your Upside app that you can transfer straight into your bank account. Here's what you do. You download the Upside app, claim an offer for whatever you're buying on Upside, you pay as usual using a debit or a credit card, and follow the steps on the app to get paid. You can use Upside at places like Chipotle, 7-Eleven, Taco Bell, and so many other places. So why not check it out to see if your favorite spot is on the app? To find out how much you could earn, click the link in the description to download Upside or scan the QR code on your screen, use our promo code LCNews, and get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. Again, that's promo code LCNews for an extra 25 cents back on your first gallon of gas. Once the hitman arrived to the gas station, according to the feds, that's when Asa Houston allegedly drove to a nearby alley before Keith Jones, David Brian Lindsay, and a third unidentified man known in the indictment as co-conspirator 2 carried out the shooting, which was captured on surveillance video. According to the indictment, 18 shots were fired during the shooting, but instead of killing Rondo, they killed Rondo's cousin, who was ID'd in court documents as SR. Authorities tracked down the men involved after the hitman used money from Lil Durk and OTF to carry out the hit. According to federal prosecutors, bank and flight records showed an OTF member and close associate of Lil Durk coordinated and paid for the 5 co-conspirators to travel from Chicago to California on the day of the murder. Court documents say around the time the one-way flights were purchased, Lil Durk told an OTF associate, "Don't book no flights under no names involved with me." That same day the hitman traveled from Chicago to California, Lil Durk also traveled to California, but in a private jet with Kavon Grant. When they touched down in Cali, Grant allegedly purchased ski masks for the shooters and paid using a credit card in Lil Durk's name for the other co-conspirators' hotel rooms. Grant was named as a top OTF associate in the indictment and allegedly also used the money to rent the luxury sedan used in the shooting and gave Jones, Lindsay, and the third unnamed suspect guns, including one that was converted into a fully automatic machine gun. After Grant, Jones, Lindsay, Wilson, and Houston were arrested in late October, Lil Durk tried to leave the U.S. According to the FBI, Durk booked at least 3 international flights. U.S. Custom and Border Protection alerted the feds he booked 2 one-way flights to Dubai and Switzerland. However, he didn't board either flight. Instead, officials say the Chicago rapper also booked a private plane to leave Miami and arrive in Italy. Durk was booked into custody on October 24th, an hour before the plane's departure. And he was taken to the Broward County Jail before his transport to Los Angeles to face the charges. Meanwhile, the other 5 men named in the indictment are still in federal custody in Illinois, pending their transfer to LA for arraignment. The Grammy Award-winning rapper and his co-defendants are facing a lengthy sentence if convicted on all counts, a max sentence of life in prison. We have a lot to unpack with this new superseding indictment against Lil Durk, so I have a great guest that I want to bring on, and that's retired Detective Commander Will Spieler. Will, always great to have you on. Now, you're from Chicago. What's your reaction to hearing Lil Durk's been arrested for this murder for hire plot that did result in the murder of the intended victim's cousin instead?
Well, it's really not a big surprise. He grew up in Inglewood. I'm very, very familiar with Inglewood. We've had problems with these Drilla rappers, with feuds in the neighborhoods that have resulted in many shootings, many murders, going back to the Chief Keef days and even before that. So it's not a really big surprise to me that he would have been involved in this type of activity.
And being that you've worked in Chicago, talk to me a little bit about the drill rapper scene over there and OTF. Have they ever been on your radar before?
Oh, absolutely. OTF specifically, not as an organization, but individuals involved with the OTF. You got to understand, it's not just the rap group OTF. It's the fact that they're affiliated with street gangs, gangster disciple street gangs. We've got all kind of gang problems out here in Chicago, and a lot of these rappers come from these crews. And we have shootings all the time where they're filming videos on the street doing their diss raps or whatever you call them, and then there's shootings at those videos, at those video shoots. So we've been after them for quite a while. Again, not going after them so much as an organization, but individuals committing these murders is in furtherance of their gang activity.
And what do you make of the rap scene that also bleeds into the street, where your favorite rapper could be coming out with great music that you enjoy, but then they still hold on to the streets, even though by all accounts they made it big?
They made it out, but some do make it out. Look at Snoop. Now, there's a perfect example who was a stone cold gangbanger in LA who made it out. And the only way they can fully make it out is you got to separate yourself from the people that drag you into that life. The kid had talent. The kid had a future. He was making money, but he couldn't get out of that gang mentality, that street mentality that he grew up with.
And, given your expertise in all of this, where does this all stem from? Is it really just like beefs within the neighborhood? Is it over women? Like, where do these rap beefs and these feuds that turn so deadly, where do they really stem and originate from?
It all starts on the streets, okay? And it all starts in the home, as we know. Dirk's dad is doing 2 life sentences. He was a leader in the Gangster Disciples. That's the life he knows. His mom worked hard. She was a nurse, I believe. She worked full time as a nurse. I mean, he grew up on the streets, and anything happens on the streets. It could be over a dope corner. It could be over a girl, like you said. It could be over property. It could be over territory. It could be over just disrespecting each other within these crews. So there's a lot of different reasons why it escalates to this, but it all stems from the street life.
And going into this murder for hire plot, was it common when you were on the force to see this deadly level of retaliation where suspects are offering bounties on the heads of others?
Yes, very common. Retaliation, as a matter of fact, when you do a post shooting report, you got to get them out about 15 minutes after you know about the shooting. You look at the area, You look at the rivals of the gangs in that area, and then you send resources to the other side to make sure, because you know there's going to be retaliation. So not only do you investigate the crime itself, but you also send resources to the other side against the rival gang you suspect that they'll be retaliating against. And it happens all the time. There's a thing on the street called an SOS, called a shoot on sight. Gangs get that with other members, and not just for individuals, individuals in the other gangs, but for anybody in that gang is an SOS, shoot on sight if you see them. So it's very common and it's still going on.
And it seems there was heavy planning involved. They bought masks, rented cars, tracked Quando Rondo down to Los Angeles. Are you surprised about this amount of planning that went into this?
No, not really. But everything you just said describes almost to a T what they're indicted for. When you talk about, there's an interstate thing. The FBI is involved because it's an interstate thing. You've got planning, you've got records, you've got interstate travel. Um, it's not surprising when you have that much of a crew that you're going to do those kind of things. Um, but all of those things add up to a lot of problems for these defendants.
Yeah, and according to the feds, Lil Durk even tried to flee out of the states too. In your opinion, what does that kind of tell you about how much he was allegedly involved in all of this?
Oh, it tells me that he knew that he was going to be targeted by a prosecution. And again, this happened in 2022, and the indictments happened starting with last in October for this murder that happens in 2022. So I will tell you this much: my experience with the feds are when the feds come looking for you, they pretty much already have you. So there was probably a grand jury convened, there were witnesses spoken to, and it got back to Dirk that, yeah, you know what, they're hot on your trail. So I think he knew full well what was happening, and and in the superseding indictment, they named him as the head of the organization, shot caller. That's not a good position to be in.
And there's been a lot of rumors circulating online that there was an informant within OTF that may have snitched on Little Dirk. What are your thoughts? And, from what we know so far, is anything pointing out to you that a snitch might have been involved?
I would say absolutely. A lot of information you get is from confidential sources, confidential informants. And when I worked with the feds, we did a 10-month wire. We had a bunch of informants. And not only do we have informants, we have informants that we put listening devices on and spoke to people. And that's how you build your case. And in that indictment was up for 10 months. We had 51 indictments. We had one trial. Everybody else pled out. Because, and again, as this progresses, as you speak to more and more people who come in and say, all right, listen, this is what we have on you, and your sentence is from now on. When people start looking at that type of sentence, they start giving information so they can get departures. Like I said, out of that 51 count indictment, we had 50 pleas and one trial.
And we're seeing 6 men who were allegedly all involved in this murder for hire that, did end up fatally wounding Rondo's cousin. What are your thoughts on this case going to trial? Do you think all 6 of them could take a plea? Do you think some could end up standing trial? What are your thoughts on where we could end up later on as this case continues to evolve?
Well, they're going to be getting offers. They're going to get offers. They're going to say, like in our case, we had the head guys were looking at life, and they pled to 30. Now, these are guys in their 20s, early 30s. Maybe they have some life after that. You're going to see people plead out in this case, depending on what they give them. But you're going to see people plead out, especially when you're looking at a life sentence. And I'm going to tell you, when the feds come after you, like I said, they've got a good case. So you're going to see some people flipping, as we say.
And kind of going back to the downward trajectory that we're seeing Lil Durk right now, where he was, going from winning Grammys, getting out of the streets to now still being tied up in his alleged gang affiliations back at home, still being tied up in the street life, and now facing a life sentence behind bars. What are your thoughts on this overall? He went to the Cinderella story now to possibly ending up behind bars for the rest of his life.
It's a tragedy. Like I said, it's hard enough for these kids to get out of the situations that they're in England. But once they do get out, you pull for them, whether it's your kind of music or not. You pull for kids to do better and not get dragged into that. But when your mentality is the street mentality, sometimes they just can't get away from that. And this is a shame. I mean, he's had run-ins with the law before, but you think he made it. And then you just get dragged down into this, and it all comes down to the street level mentality, and that's what they know.
And the Quando Rondo shooting did happen in 2022. Why do you think we're seeing the indictment now, 2 years later? Talk to me a little bit about all that it takes to go into this level of investigation, especially given now that the federal government's involved.
Well, it's just that. It's that the federal government is involved, and once the federal government gets involved, whatever information they have, and it starts out in L.A. Uh, LA will develop information. They'll see that there's a federal tie when you start talking about crossing state lines. You start talking about crossing state lines, using public transportation to get to a crime. Um, then they start to build it. And like I said, with the feds, they're not in a hurry. They will build. They'll interview. They'll convene a grand jury. They'll get all kind of testimony in before the grand jury, before you'll do your indictments or before you'll do your criminal complaint, where you'll name your defendants. 2 years is about average.
All right. Well, Will Spielar, I appreciate always your time and your insight into cases like this. But before we sign you off, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think I'm good. It's always a pleasure to speak with you, and again, it's just a shame that this type of stuff happens for a kid that probably made it out. We'll see what happens in the future.
Yeah, and of course, we'll continue to follow this as well, too. Again, thank you, Will, so much for your time today. I always appreciate it.
You're welcome anytime.
All 6 defendants, including Lil Durk, haven't entered a plea to the charges, but are expected to be arraigned in a Los Angeles federal court in the coming weeks. Reporting for Law and Crime, I'm Elizabeth Milner.